I mentioned a moment ago about energy, hope, and accomplishment. And Bill Millar radiates that. In a moment, I'm going to ask you all to channel your inner Bill Millar. We want you to be ready for his valedictory address. Bill is retiring in a couple weeks, head of APTA. We owe a lot to Bill Millar. He's sort of been my partner in crime. We came to Washington in our current assignments at about the same time. And Bill locked on from the outset. Somebody who didn't shy away from the difficult task of advancing innovative policy, building coalitions, being a part of the practical politics, putting heart, soul, and frequent flyer miles on the line to spread the word. Now, Bill had a long and distinguished career in the transit industry before he took this assignment in Pennsylvania, and you know a lot about that. But what some of you may not know is that Bill started his career as a planner. And that commitment to the big picture never left him. He never wavered in that commitment for his organization or tying in with this organization or helping you with your organization. Commitment to the big picture, engaging people, putting himself on the line tirelessly. Volution would not be where it is today without the partnership with APTA and the leadership of Bill Millar. And it is my honor to introduce you, board member, APTA honcho, all around really good guy, Bill Millar.
Oh, my friend, thank you. Very nice. Oh, I could have listened to that for hours.
Good job.
Earl, thank you so much. And you're right about this group. We all come here to get recharged. And to look out and see a whole room full of rechargers is a great thing. And Earl, thank you not only for those overly generous comments about any small role I may have played in all this, but thank you for your annual reminding us of the history of our movement, of reminding us why we're doing what we're doing, and giving us glimpses of hope that we all need to continue it. You know, Earl is the godfather of Revolution, and he can be very nice about spreading around. Yeah, absolutely. He can be very nice about spreading around what little part any of the rest of us may have played, but there is no doubt there would be no revolution without Earl, so I'm glad that you recognize that. Well, my role always is to discuss, quote unquote, the state of the revolution, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. This is one of the speeches I do look forward to every year, though Earl is certainly right. It's one of the speeches where you want to be just right on, because all of you came here to get that sustenance, get that knowledge, get that sense of community, and so that you can go back and work in your communities. I think this is the first time I've ever been sandwiched between such formidable gentlemen and speakers as I am this morning, and it is a great honor not only to be with Earl, but with Secretary Ray LaHood. You know, as he has said on numerous occasions, transportation wasn't necessarily his thing when he was asked to serve as the Secretary of Transportation, but he has really shown all of us not only that he's a great leader as Secretary of Transportation, but that he gets it. He gets it. Empty buses, empty rail cars, empty roads, none of that matters. It's what transportation does for people that matters. And so, Secretary LaHood, it is indeed a great honor to be with you today as well. Yeah, you can give him a round too. And my friend Grace Kruniken, America the Beautiful, right there. No doubt about it. And I don't care what agency you work for, we know you're doing the right thing at all times. Earl made some mention of the fact that in a couple of weeks, actually on Halloween, I turn into a pumpkin is what happens. And, but I wanted to assure you that the leadership of APTA will continue to be very supportive of Revolution. He made some reference to my successor. I'll make a little more. I'd like Michael Milanofi to stand up in the first row here. Michael will be taking over as the APTA president. Yeah, you can give him a round of applause too. He has many excellent credentials in his background, including having been a public transit manager in several cities, as well as good private sector experience with one of our nation's largest domestic bus builders. And I know from my 15 years of working with Michael as a member of our organization, you're in for a treat. He's a good leader. He understands and supports the things we work for, and I am certain Earl, that APTA will continue to support Revolution. Well, I think this is my 14th Revolution, something like that, so I don't have quite as many under my belt as many of you, but indeed it's a pleasure to be here, and certainly it is great, as Earl said, to have Revolution back in Washington. And I was thinking about just what he said, how different Washington was in 97 when we were first here for that, and how many people have worked together to really change the image of what this city is, what it can be, what it should be. Just the other day I was having dinner at one of the restaurants over on Pennsylvania Avenue, and while I was waiting for the rest of my party to come, you know, hey, I'm a transit guy, what do? I count the buses, I look and see what's going on. But there was a new thing to count on Pennsylvania Avenue, and that was the number of bikers that were commuting that evening. They still don't stop at the red lights, though. But at any rate, but there are just so many ways that this community has grown and improved and are implementing the principles that we're talking about. Well, as I say, my main goal here today is always to talk about the state of the revolution. And let me tell you, the state of the revolution in many ways is very good indeed. We just recently released the ridership statistics for public transportation usage in America, and the news is good. For the first 6 months of this year, we were up almost 2% as compared to the year before. Now, if we were back 5 years ago and I said 2%, you'd go, huh. But given the state of the economy, given the high unemployment rate and the other things that we know we're facing, to see an increase of any size is certainly good news indeed. And for the purposes of this conference, when you look behind those numbers, I'll give you two other numbers. Remember I said, well, I'll give you the precise number. The the first 6 month increase was 1.7%, almost 2% over last year. But when you look at heavy rail systems in America, subway, elevated, those kinds of systems, they're up more than twice that, 3.8%. When you look at light rail in America, again, more than twice that, 3.7%. So while Americans are expressing with their feet, with their decisions that they want to use public transit, they are expressing a particular love for wanting to use rail transit. In some communities, we're seeing enormous growth. Now, a lot of this is because those communities are trying where they can within their limited budgets to increase service. So, for example, the heavy rail system in San Juan, Puerto Rico, up over 21%. Seattle, King County, the light rail system just keeps setting new records every month, and year over year up some 42%. On the Lake Union line, I guess they've gone from 2-car trains to 3-car trains or some such thing. And so again, when you give people good service, they'll use transit. There's no secret to this whole deal. Everybody says to me, oh, how are you going to get people to use transit? Give them something that's valuable, that meets their lifestyle, that they can use. And guess what? They do, in fact, use it. So I think one other thing in these ridership statistics, without making too much about them, I think they're an indication of another thing, and that is when you consider that almost 60% of transit usage in America is for people to go back and forth to work. When people start to use transit, it is one more indicator that, yes, more jobs are being created, more people are, in fact, able to go back and forth to work. So I certainly hope that we have another good sign that that's happening. You know, one thing we talk about every year is the progress that you are making in your communities in opening new rail lines and extending new lines, in moving through the planning process towards new lines. And again, I think this year, even in tough economic times, the news on that front is good. Since we met together last year, where was that, Earl? Someplace out west, wasn't it like that? Portland, yeah. Portland, as I recall. Since we gathered in Portland, 2 new rail extensions have opened around the country, 2 new rail systems have opened around the country, and several new rail systems are under construction. Certainly one project that all of us have watched, I think if Randy Wright were here, it probably was born on a napkin about 15 or 18 years ago at a Revolution conference, and that's the Tide Light Rail System in Hampton Roads, Virginia, in Norfolk, city of Norfolk. That is one that this conference has followed and followed and followed, and it's had its ups and it's had its downs, but it opened this summer, and guess what? 2 months into its life, you know what's happening to the ridership? It's exceeding expectations. Now again, the critics said a town the size of Norfolk, Virginia had no business doing light rail. Well, they didn't tell the citizens of Norfolk, and they're using it, and it's coming along, and it's good. How about Denton County, Texas? Who knows where Denton County, Texas is? Gary Thomas, don't answer. All right, put your hand down, Gary. Well, Denton is one of those places that used to be prairie and ranches, and now is suburb and exurb and developing urban area northwest of Dallas and north of Fort Worth. Well, they have worked hard on a series of transportation improvements, and part of that is something called the A-Train. And they opened the first piece of the A-Train there, and some 21 miles of rail across North Texas. And you remember what they said about Texans, don't you? That you'd never get a Texan out of his or her pickup truck to ride light rail or ride any form of rail. Well, just as we've proven in Dallas, in Houston, in Austin, and now Denton, Texans are responding to good service. And I understand with the opening of the University of North Texas that ridership understandably is growing again as those students use it. Speaking of Texas, you already saw the hand, if you were quick there, of Gary Thomas. Gary, as you know, runs the Dallas DART system. Gary, as you may not know, is APTA's chair this year. So Gary, congratulations to you on that. But for the purposes of this group, congratulations. You've opened up many more miles of light rail since we were together last year, and you now operate the longest light rail system in America. So congratulations to Dallas DART. And you know what else? Texans are using light rail in Dallas. So very good news indeed. Another city that we have watched go from a place that really, another place that we've watched over the years go from a very small bus system to now something much greater and grander, both in the bus side of the house and the rail side of the house, is Salt Lake City, Utah, and the good work of the Utah Transportation Authority. I had the privilege in early August to go out to Salt Lake, where they opened not one, but 2 light rail extensions on that particular day, adding almost 16 miles of additional rail to their service. Both extensions delivered on time and under budget, and just doing great. I talked to Michael Egra the other day. He tells me ridership is ahead of projection, and one more time Utah has a success in his hands. And you know, I can remember not so long ago when people said, oh, the people of Utah are way too conservative to support public transit, way too careful with their money to ever invest in rail, and now they are one of the top successes that we see around the country. So again, I think very good news indeed. Earl made good reference, and properly so, to the Obama administration and the work of Secretary LaHood in advancing the things that we care about and do. He made good reference to the relationship among the various cabinet departments to try to push forward with livability agenda. It's important to realize that most of these projects don't go forward without federal aid. And even if that federal aid is not as much as we might wish, or even if it isn't even half the cost, as it should be, at least that, still it is always a linchpin in moving these projects forward. And in the last year, several full funding grant agreements for rail projects have been signed. The Sun Rail project in Orlando, one of the most interesting and exciting projects out in Colorado, the Eagle P3 project, and of course the Central Corridor work up in the Twin Cities up in Minnesota, and the list. Oh, we got some Minnesotans here, I guess, or something like that. That's good. And so the administration does what it can within the constraints that Congress has given it to move this agenda forward. And my spies tell me there are several more full funding grant agreements working their way through the labyrinth up on Capitol Hill. So again, I think as you look down the road, you can really see some good promise. Well, are we getting ahead of the public? You know, I hear these politicians who want to tell me that people won't go for higher taxes, that, you know, they don't want any more public spending. Interesting. That's what I hear. That's not what I see. Again, last year as we left Portland, Oregon, we had an election, I think, if I recall right. And in that election, depending upon how you interpret it, some people say the country took a hard turn to the right. And on that day, pick your number, something like 75 new members of Congress were sent to Washington, and supposedly with an agenda to cut government and yada, 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 as Earl has explained to you. Well, what did the voters else do that day? What else did they do besides send those folks to Washington? Well, they had a chance to vote on transit initiatives across the country. And you know what they did? On that day, when they were supposedly sending this message of no taxes, they raised their taxes 73% of the time. They raised their taxes for new transit service. They continued taxes for service that was already in place, but a tax was about to expire. They sold bonds that have to be paid back with tax money in order to move ahead with their transportation agenda. And it wasn't all that unusual. It was just the day they did it that was unusual, because since the year 2000, we've been tracking these things, almost 75% of the time Americans will vote for more public transportation. So I think that's good news. And by the way, if you think you're off the hook with all this good news I've been talking about, you're not, because when you get back home, there's a number of ballot initiatives coming up very soon that we have to make sure we press forward with. Durham County, North Carolina, Cincinnati, Ohio, Clark County, Washington, Seattle, Washington, and a host of other communities are going to be asking their voters for either new money or permission to proceed or such things. So community activists, all that we are, you can't rest when you get home. If you live in any of those communities, you've got to be moving along. I expect, yeah, that's all right. You can give yourself applause on that one. You got work to do. I'm sensing that Grace is getting nervous here. How many more hours is he going to go? So let me just try to finish up. You know, besides all the good things we've talked about here, more is happening literally from coast to coast. You know, in Honolulu, if ever there was a place that needed a rail line, it's Honolulu, and they've broken ground now. We literally have projects underway from Hawaii to Massachusetts, from Texas, Utah, Oregon, Louisiana, all over the country. This is a movement across the country. As Earl said, it's not a blue state, red state deal. It's an American deal. And it's what Americans want. They want choice. They want the opportunity to move about their community more freely. They want cleaner air for themselves and their children. They don't want us dependent on foreign oil supplies that are so expensive and mess up our economy and our ecology in so many different ways. They want choice. And so you should feel good about what you do, because what you're doing is giving people choice, helping people to realize whatever it is they want to realize in their lives, and doing it through transportation choice, and doing it through livable communities, and doing it through making the world more walkable, more bikeable, more ways that we can travel. And that's a good thing. So over the next several days, feed off each other, trade ideas, enjoy each other's company, revel in our successes, figure out in those areas where it didn't go like we wanted, how we can do it better. I assure you that I and all of us at the American Public Transportation Association will be right there with you. We thank you strongly for your support. We thank you strongly for your work. And let me just say for me personally, it has just been great fun to be with you every year and give the speech I like the best. Thanks so much. Good luck to all.